Welcome to the Transportation Channel podcast. I'm Matthew Perry, co-founder and CEO of the Transportation Channel. Our podcast will provide you with valuable insights from industry experts on a wide array of transportation-related topics. Today, our discussion centers around robo-taxis. We are joined by three transportation experts: Alan Clellan, board member for the Transportation Channel; Dick Mudge, board member for the Transportation Channel; and Alan Pisarski, advisory board member for the Transportation Channel. Before we get started, please remember to go to thetransportationchannel.com to upload a video and become part of our growing community. Now let's get started. Alan Clellan, to you first. Testing of robotaxis is continuing in several U.S. cities despite some early setbacks. How do you currently see the potential impacts of such driverless services?
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it. I believe that while we may not see fully autonomous, anytime, anywhere driverless vehicles, we will see widespread deployments for use by the public. And I really believe this is especially important for our aging driver population. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead, Alan.
Fatal traffic crashes per mile driven increase after age 70, and drivers aged 85 and over have the highest fatality rate. Many of these fatalities are due to increased fragility associated with aging. And as an example of this, 1 in 30 citations for drivers that are over 55 are for failure to yield right of way. So you can see that this accident rate, the fatality rate, is an important issue. It's so important that the American Association for Retired Persons offers a safe driver program, which addresses challenges that senior drivers face in the ever-changing world of road transportation. And an important part of the Smart Driver course, of which I am an instructor, is to highlight the seniors to the importance of moving away from driving themselves to using alternative forms of transportation, which allow them to safely maintain their independence and flexibility in their mobility. Now, what we call in the profession mobility as a service, mobility on demand, this ability to just call up and get the vehicle to come pick you up. These are very important options for seniors. And autonomous vehicle shuttle services and robo-taxis will evolve, I believe, to be significant players in this particular market. For this to happen, there has to be acceptance by seniors, and that's very, very important. Because for this growing part of the population, there are significant barriers and reluctance to using them, such as the lack of the human driver. Now, this is you can well understand this, yeah. It's important to realize that such initial barriers can be removed through using the service. This is being shown through research and anecdotal experiences documented as part of these early trials that Matthew referred to. As such services increase in availability nationwide, so will the number of seniors using them, thus providing this ever-growing part of the population with potentially safer and cost-effective mobility options. And that's what I really see and hope will happen with the adoption of these vehicles.
Wonderful. Alan Clellan, thank you so much for that. Now to you, Dick Mudge.
Yeah. Robo-taxi is another word for self-driving cars. Waymo has deployed self-driving cars in Phoenix, San Francisco, and parts of Los Angeles, with plans to expand in other cities, including Texas. There are a growing number of robo-taxis in China, and China has a $1.5 trillion network under construction. Chinese firms are testing in the U.S. Mobileye, partly owned by Intel, is active in Europe and Israel. The technology is at an early stage, making it easy to speculate about the future. One question: are robotaxis more than a high-tech version of Uber and Lyft? That is, will robotaxis replace private cars? Will there be more one-car families and fewer two-car families? This has implications for where people live and work. Robotaxis also can help people who do not own a car who have trouble driving a car. How low will travel costs go once there is no driver? To date, most robo-taxis in the U.S. charge about the same amount as Uber and Lyft. In theory, the cost of travel should drop significantly, maybe to 25 or 50 cents a mile. This is still not free travel, but has major implications for our access to jobs, health, family, and recreation. Real change in costs requires competition. Waymo is owned by Google and is the current market leader in the US. Zoox, owned by Amazon, plans to deploy later this year, as does Cruise. Cruise is partly owned by General Motors. In sum, there are fun times ahead for transportation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dick Mudge. Now to you, Alan Pisarski.
I'm going to try to take a broad socioeconomic view here. To me, a person being driven in an autonomous vehicle is not significantly different from a single driver on a trip. You've got a 150-pound person in a 3,000-pound vehicle. Safety is, as Alan mentioned, is very powerful, and some of the other points are powerful. But in many cases, one can't accept anything more than the fact that we'd be better off if that person owned that vehicle. That vehicle then would be available when they wanted to go and take them there and back. It would not have to make a trip to the person's site. It wouldn't then have to drop them off and go find something else to do. So it would be, in fact, saving by having them at home where they could be afforded. They would be saving energy and on congestion. And so I think in many instances, this would be kind of like more of a home vehicle than a taxi. From a transit point of view, efficiency point of view, the best bet would be for some small autonomous vans, moving people, picking them up at their home sites, taking them as a MOS, mobility as a service, and taking them to an assembly point. This has been happening now in some of the transit agencies. This only works for multiple passengers. If there's an employee on the vehicle overseeing interactions, kind of like a cab or a bus driver, people, especially older, wouldn't use an autonomous vehicle if others can get in the vehicle that they don't know. Maybe if you have a situation in which people are comfortable with each other, a retirement community, a college campus, this would look a lot like hitchhiking among friends. Via a van company that operates this kind of MOS service for transit agencies has been picking up people at stations, and it's a growing activity, delivering folks, and they're doing it cheaper than the transit agencies. The transit agencies are paying them to pick up people. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you, Alan Pisarski. Now we're going to open it up for panel discussion. Going off of what Alan had mentioned about it would be great if people actually own these driverless vehicles and they were at their home. If that's not the case, could the economic impact affect car sales? Meaning, if less people are buying cars because they're relying on driverless services, could that really have a negative impact on car sales and hence the economy?
I think it's that's a good question, but of course, whoever is running the autonomous vehicles has to buy them as well. They're going to be used very intensively. They'll have to be replaced sooner than your home car would be. And the other thing that happens too, I think, with the economy, if the automated vehicles really give people better access to jobs, that'll be better for the economy.
Right.
I think the point that I have to accept very significantly here is the fact that among low-income populations, this is a great substitute, if it's going to be cheaper, for the taxi cab. When you look at activities, transportation activities among low-income households, people who don't own a car, living in inner city or inner suburbs, Brooklyn, Queens, the opportunity, if you have a sick child, you end up calling a taxi cab to take that kid to the hospital. And I think you see a lot of taxi cab usage by lower income people. So being able to lower that cost with
Yeah.
an autonomous vehicle can have real payoffs.
Right. Alan?
Which Alan?
Alan, you're muted, Alan.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So the initial question that you asked, Matthew, specifically referenced robo-taxis. But I think we're going to see a blurring of this, of the definition of a taxi. A taxi, when you think of a taxi, you have a very specific thing in mind. Vehicle, smaller vehicle, a car. But I think with the robo-taxi, we'll see a broader use with larger vehicles as well, being able to take multiple persons. And the fact that you can do the trip and not have to worry about parking the car. I mean, I live in the LA area, and parking is a nightmare. And the amount of land that we use because just to provide parking. You look at the planning requirements if you're putting a new building in, or new residential or business. The parking requirements that you have to follow to get permission to build, they're extensive. And a lot of that will be reduced and removed as this type of vehicle becomes more popular and more available. And I take Alan's point about people might not like getting into a vehicle with other people. But if the vehicle is designed in such a way that there's a separation, you're not sitting next to somebody you don't know. And there are examples of like the canoe, for example. I think the acceptance will continue, definitely, because of the benefits that are offered.
Wonderful.
Many years ago, the DC taxi cabs could pick up people, and they'd stop at the bus stops and wave you over and ask you where you're going and say, jump in. But my point is that the driver now is the moderator of that vehicle activity, just as the bus driver might serve as kind of a manager. And I think it would be very hard, especially for older people, to be having someone else get into an empty vehicle.
That's very interesting. Well, with that, we're going to end this session. I wanted to thank all three of you for your participation. Until next time, I am Matthew Perry for the Transportation Channel, and thank you for watching.